Have you ever felt someone smile at you in a way that wasn't warmth, but a quiet sting, a soft tone hiding a sharp edge? Passive-aggressive people move like shadows, offering kindness with one hand while pressing doubt into you with the other. I've watched it, felt it, learned from it. Stoicism teaches us to see beneath the surface, to stay calm while others twist the air around us. Stay with me. There's a quieter, smarter way to expose the truth without ever raising your voice. As we step into this first chapter, imagine a moment when someone's smile looks warm but feels strangely cold, as if light is leaking through cracked glass. You catch the slight tightening in your chest, the flicker of instinct telling you that something is wrong. It is the kind of wrong that does not shout. It whispers. It hides inside politeness, inside compliments that land with a dull sting, inside questions shaped like statements. Passive-aggressive people rarely raise their voices. Yet their quiet hostility can bruise you more deeply than open conflict ever could. Now imagine yourself standing in a conversation where every word carries two meanings. One that everyone else hears, and one meant only for you. You agree, politely, you nod, you smile, but inside you feel the faint cut beneath the surface. Many people dismiss these encounters because the harm is subtle, barely traceable, but your body remembers what your mind tries to excuse. Stoicism teaches that the mind must learn to observe without absorbing, yet before we learn that, many of us walk through years of confusion, wondering why certain kind people make us feel small. I remember a colleague like that. He greeted everyone with the same firm handshake, the same confident nod, the same half smile curved just enough to pass as friendly. But whenever success touched my work, his praise arrived wrapped in doubt. Impressive, he would say. I suppose even unexpected things happen sometimes. Harmless to the untrained ear, harmful to the one receiving it. You feel the jab but cannot explain it without sounding overly sensitive. That is the genius of passive aggression. It injures without leaving fingerprints. In those days, I did what many people do. I softened. I became more agreeable. I tried to prove there was no reason to treat me that way. But people who rely on subtle hostility are not seeking mutual understanding. They are seeking control through uncertainty. When you bend, they press harder. When you explain, they twist your explanation. When you try to fix a problem they created, you step deeper into their fog. There is no winning in their terrain because the battlefield isn't the words. They are the emotions behind the words. But a Stoic sees differently. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind must be trained to see things as they are, stripped of the stories we attach to them. This is your first advantage. The moment you stop reacting to tone and start examining intention, the fog begins to lift. You see the remark not as a judgment of your worth, but as a reflection of their internal state, their insecurity, their envy, their discomfort with your presence or progress. Clarity doesn't inflate you, it simply frees you from taking their behavior personally. Think of it like this: a passive-aggressive comment is a seed thrown at you before it took root. You watered it with overthinking, nurtured it with self-doubt, and soon it grew into something larger than it ever should have been. But when you adopt the Stoic's gaze, the seed falls onto stone. It cannot sprout. You still hear the remark, but it does not enter you. You observe it, understand it, and let it land where it belongs, at their feet, not yours. Let's bring this into a real moment. You walk into a meeting early. Someone looks up and says with a gentle smile, "Oh, early today. That's rare." In the past, you might have rushed to defend yourself. Traffic was better today, or I finished my work quickly. But notice how those explanations pull you into their frame. They shift you from calm presence into unnecessary justification. And the moment you start explaining yourself unnecessarily, you shift from acting to reacting. And reaction is the only place where they hold any power. A Stoic does something different. You answer only to what is factual, leaving everything emotional unclaimed. It is astonishing how quickly the air clears when you do this. A simple "good morning" is enough. No defense, no over-explaining, no bending yourself to soothe the insecurity of another person. This is not coldness. It is clarity. As Seneca reminded his students, he who is calm is unconquered. When you refuse to react to the invisible hook inside their words, they lose the leverage they were quietly reaching for. Something powerful happens when you stop feeding their uncertainty. Your steadiness quietly strips away the disguises they rely on. Their intentions become visible, not because you point them out, but because you no longer absorb them. Their comments begin to sound weaker even to themselves. Their smile falters because it no longer hides anything. People who rely on hidden hostility depend on your confusion. Your clarity threatens their entire strategy. They wanted you entangled. Instead, you stand still. They wanted you rattled. Instead, you remain grounded. Their tool becomes useless against someone who does not pick it up. I remember the first time I understood this fully. Someone sent a kind message that carried a faint sourness beneath every word. The old version of me would have felt uneasy and started overthinking the tone. But that day, something inside had changed. I read it, breathed, and saw the intention without letting it touch me. I replied simply and calmly. No defense, no emotional labor, no effort to repair what they were quietly trying to damage. And for the first time, I watched the discomfort shift to them. They looked unsettled, almost exposed, because their tactic had no place to land. That moment taught me something essential. Passive-aggressive behavior collapses when you refuse to participate in it. You don't need to confront it. You don't need to call it out loudly. You don't need to play detective and decode every nuance. You simply stay anchored in yourself, and by doing so, you reveal their behavior without lifting a finger. Stoicism is not about becoming hard. It is about becoming clear. Clarity is quiet, unshakable, simple. And that simplicity is what subtle manipulators cannot tolerate. You don't defeat them with bigger words. You defeat them by refusing to carry their hidden message into your own mind. From here, the next step becomes even more strategic. Responding only to what is real, not to the emotion someone is trying to provoke. That is where your quiet advantage sharpens. That is where power returns to you. And that is where we will go next. Moving into this second chapter, imagine a moment when a single sentence enters the room like a thin thread of smoke, barely visible yet impossible to ignore. You hear the words, but what you feel is something else entirely. A softness designed to unsettle, a politeness meant to provoke. Passive-aggressive people speak in echoes, hoping you will mistake the echo for your own thoughts. Their goal is rarely the message itself. It is the emotion they want to plant inside you. And here is where everything becomes dangerous, because the real trap is not their remark. The real trap is your reaction to it. Have you ever noticed how quickly the mind begins to build a story after someone says something ambiguous? How your heart tightens, your breath shortens, your thoughts begin to race. Stoicism teaches us to slow this storm. to see that most of the turmoil comes not from the words spoken, but from the meaning we rush to attach to them. Epictetus warned, "We are disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of them." This is the battlefield passive-aggressive people depend on, the battlefield inside you. Now imagine a simple scene. You share an idea. Someone responds with a gentle smile and says, "Interesting. I never would have thought you'd choose that direction." On the surface, it seems harmless. Yet the undercurrent is clear. They want you to feel insecure. They want you to defend. They want you to justify. Because the moment you begin justifying yourself, you hand them the very power they were fishing for. You stop responding to the message and start responding to the emotion they built into it. This is where the Stoic turns the tide. Instead of absorbing the emotion, you separate it from the words. You examine the sentence as though it were placed on a table between you and them. You look at it with calm eyes. You ask yourself, what is actually being said here? What is real and what is merely an invitation to feel something unnecessary? That pause, silent, simple, unhurried, is where your strength lives. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that you should return to yourself when others try to pull you into their storm. That single line holds the blueprint for dealing with passive-aggressive people. They want you off balance. They want you to lean toward them. They want you to operate from emotion instead of clarity. But when you return to yourself, your center, your judgment, your steadiness, you break the link between their intention and your inner life. I learned this deeply during a conversation with someone who carried passive aggression like a second skin. He rarely spoke harshly, but he always spoke in ways that made others adjust themselves. One afternoon, I explained a project I was working on, something meaningful to me. He smiled his usual thin smile and said, "Well, if that works for you, that's surprising, but all right." In the past, that comment would have sent me spiraling inward. I would have started explaining why my idea made sense, how much work I'd done, why it wasn't foolish. I would have tried to convince him of something he already knew. He knew my idea had merit, and that was precisely why he tried to shake it. But that day, I paused. I breathed. I returned to myself. I didn't react to the emotion he hoped to provoke. I responded only to the literal message. I said, "It does work for me. Nothing more. No defensive tone, no clarifications, no emotional labor disguised as politeness." And I watched something shift. The conversation that would normally pull me inward suddenly stayed outside of me. His tactic lost its weight because the reaction it depended on never arrived. This is where you begin to see the truth. Passive-aggressive people depend on your participation. They need your confusion to fuel their subtle dominance. They need your defensiveness to feel superior. They need you to chase clarity so they can withhold it. But when you stop chasing, they lose the entire structure of their strategy. There is an image I often return to. Think of a fisherman casting a line into the water. The bait is shiny, tempting, designed to provoke a bite. The fish that bites gets caught. But the fish that simply observes the bait gliding through the water remains free. Their remarks are invitations to a game you never agreed to play. Declining that invitation is the beginning of your freedom. Stoic composure is the refusal to bite. The beauty of Stoicism lies in its practicality. This is not about being silent. It is about being steady. It is about responding to what is real, not what is implied. You might answer calmly, "What exactly do you mean?" Not as an attack, but as clarity. You might reply, "I hear your comment. I'll think on it." You might simply continue your point without engaging with the hidden emotional layer. These responses are not weapons, they are shields, shields made of reasoning, self-respect, and unshakable presence. There was a woman I once worked with who mastered this art so naturally that others were often disarmed by her. When someone made a passive-aggressive remark toward her, she didn't react with irritation or self-defense. Instead, she met the comment with calm curiosity. "Can you clarify that?" she would ask. And suddenly, the person had to reveal their intent clearly or retreat. Most retreated, because passive-aggressive behavior thrives in shadow. It dissolves in direct light. Your goal is not to win the conversation. Your goal is to keep your mind free. When someone tries to provoke insecurity, let it pass through you. When someone leaves a remark hanging, do not fill it with your imagination. When someone hints at an insult, refuse to build it into a narrative. That discipline, quiet, mature, composed, is where real strength resides. And here is the truth that changes everything. Once you stop reacting to the emotional bait, they reveal themselves more clearly. They become less subtle, more obvious. And as their tactics unravel, so does their influence over you. From here, we step into the next part of this journey, how calm clarification removes the shield passive-aggressive people hide behind, and why it exposes their behavior without a single raised voice. Here's where the third chapter begins, with the image of a slow light rising behind a fogged window, revealing shapes that were always there but hidden until you dared to look directly. This is the moment passive-aggressive behavior loses its shadow, not because you confront it loudly, but because you illuminate it calmly. And nothing unsettles a person hiding behind half-meanings more than being asked to clarify their own words. Now imagine this scene. Someone makes a comment wrapped in politeness, the kind that sounds safe to everyone else but lands sharply on you. A soft jab disguised as concern, a compliment bent slightly out of shape. A suggestion that feels more like a question about your competence. You feel the old habit rising, either letting it slide to avoid tension or defending yourself too quickly. But something inside you has changed. You pause, you breathe, and instead of swallowing the discomfort or wrestling with it alone, you steady the moment with a direct question, and suddenly the room feels different, less murky, more honest. What did you mean by that? It is remarkable how such a quiet sentence rearranges the entire room. Stoicism teaches that clarity is a form of courage, and Seneca once wrote that truth loses nothing by being examined. Passive-aggressive people, however, thrive on remaining unexamined. Their words are crafted to wound without exposing intent. But when you shine a steady light on their remark, you force the intent to stand naked in the open, and most cannot handle the exposure. There was a man I once met in a professional setting. He prided himself on being direct, though his directness always seemed to strike from the side rather than the front. One morning, after I presented a project, he leaned back with a smirk and said, "I guess we're trying anything these days." The old version of me would have felt the familiar tightness in my chest, followed by the urge to defend myself or joke it off. But this time, I looked at him, calm, grounded, and said, "Can you clarify what you meant?" It was like dropping silence into water and watching ripples shift everything around it. His confidence cracked almost immediately. He blinked, searching for a safe exit from his own implication. "Oh no, I just meant, experimenting is good." But the energy had already changed. The power behind his remark dissolved because the ambiguity that protected him had vanished. And his retreat told me everything I needed to know, not about my idea, but about him. Clarity exposes the intention behind the tone. This is the essence of Stoic strategy. You don't punish, you don't accuse, you don't attack. You simply ask for truth. Epictetus taught that the one who speaks should speak clearly, and the one who listens should listen without fear. When you seek clarity, you are not confronting the person, you are confronting the distortion. And when the distortion collapses, the person must either stand honestly or reveal their discomfort. Another example comes from a woman I saw handle passive aggression with effortless grace. During a meeting, someone said to her, "I suppose your approach might work in certain situations." It was the perfect passive-aggressive line, insult hidden in a cloud of ambiguity. She turned her head gently, her voice steady, and said, "Which situations are you referring to?" It was not a challenge, it was inquiry, yet it disassembled the remark completely. The other person stumbled, backtracked, softened, because clarity demanded sincerity, and sincerity was not what they intended to deliver. This is the subtle power of calm clarification. It is not aggression, it is not resistance, it is simply truth-seeking. And truth-seeking removes the camouflage passive-aggressive people depend on. They expect you to get flustered. They expect you to interpret their words emotionally. They expect you to either shrink or explode. They do not expect you to stay composed and bring their words into the open air. And here's the deeper truth. When you ask for clarity, you take the frame away from them. A passive-aggressive comment is crafted to control the emotional direction of the conversation. But when you ask them to explain themselves, the direction shifts. They are now the ones who must define, justify, and stand behind what they said. Many cannot. Because the remark was not designed to be examined, it was designed to land quietly, bruise subtly, and leave you questioning yourself instead of them. Marcus Aurelius taught that the truth is simple, deception requires complication, and you can see that in the way passive-aggressive people respond when asked for clarity. Direct truth comes easily. Hidden hostility crumbles. They either soften and rephrase, or they expose their intention fully, and either outcome benefits you. Sometimes the clarification question doesn't even need to be verbal. A simple pause, a steady expression, or a gentle "I'm listening" can be enough to shift the dynamic. Passive-aggressive behavior is built on the assumption that you will rush to fill the silence, fill the gap, fill the uncertainty. But when you refuse to fill it, they must fill it themselves, and in doing so, they lose the ambiguity that protects them. I once watched someone receive a passive-aggressive remark during a group discussion. Instead of replying, she simply held the space with silence, her eyes calm but attentive. The person who made the remark grew visibly uncomfortable, then quickly added, "That's not what I meant. I just think we might need to adjust the timing." But the adjustment was not the point. The point was the way silence allowed the truth to reveal itself without force. This is where your stoic presence becomes a quiet force. You don't amplify the conflict, you don't escalate, you don't match their hidden hostility. You simply remove the fog they hope to hide behind. And when the fog lifts, their tactic loses its power. The beauty of calm clarification is that it also protects your dignity. You do not lower yourself to their indirectness. You rise above it by remaining rooted in reason. You show that you value clear communication, that you won't play in the shadows, and that your peace isn't up for negotiation. From here, the journey moves toward a deeper form of strength, the ability to hold boundaries without justifying or explaining yourself. And that, in the next chapter, is where your quiet power becomes unmistakable. Advancing to this fourth chapter, picture a door quietly closing, not slammed, not rushed, just steady, certain, deliberate, like someone finally choosing to guard the peace inside their own home. This is the feeling of setting a boundary without explaining yourself. A calm firmness, a quiet refusal, a line drawn not in anger, but in clarity. And it is here, more than anywhere else, that passive-aggressive people start to show their true discomfort. Now imagine this moment. Someone asks you to take on a task you didn't agree to, using the same familiar coating of sweetness that hides their entitlement. Or they push a responsibility toward you with an innocent shrug, pretending it's just a small thing, knowing exactly what they're doing. The old version of you might have felt the pressure rising, the obligation, the guilt, the desire to avoid conflict. But something in you has shifted. Instead of bending, you breathe. Instead of scrambling for excuses, you stay still. And in that stillness, you answer with a simple truth. No, that doesn't work for me. Stoicism teaches that self-respect is not loud. It is not defended by long explanations or softened by unnecessary apologies. It is lived. Seneca once wrote that we must own ourselves fully. And part of owning ourselves is refusing to surrender our time, our energy, or our dignity just to keep another person comfortable, especially someone who uses subtle tactics to take advantage of it. What makes this difficult is not the boundary itself. It is the silence that follows. That small, charged moment when you say no without justifying it, without padding it, without adding layers of softness to protect the other person's ego. Passive-aggressive people feel that silence like a spotlight, because for the first time, their indirect attempts at control fall flat. I remember a time when someone regularly tried to place their unfinished work on my plate, always with the same innocent tone. "You're so good with this. Could you just look at it? It would really help me." The words sounded harmless, even flattering, but the pattern was clear. Each request took something from me. Time I didn't have, energy I couldn't spare. Back then, I'd try to soften the refusal. "I'm not sure I can," or "I'll try if I have time." And every soft refusal was treated like a negotiation, as if my boundary were merely a suggestion. The day everything changed was the day I decided to answer differently. When he brought the papers to my desk with that familiar tone, I didn't explain anything. I didn't justify. I simply said, "I won't be taking that on." Calm, even, steady. And then I let the silence do its work. He froze for a moment, blinked, and then tried the usual tactic. Guilt disguised as gratitude. "Oh, I just thought you'd want to help." But okay. But the tone was hollow, because it wasn't about helping. It was about access. And that access had just been closed. That moment taught me a truth I never forgot. A boundary becomes real only when you stop explaining it. When you explain, you negotiate. When you justify, you weaken it. When you apologize, you surrender it. But when you state it clearly and leave it standing, the boundary speaks for itself. Here's where Stoic philosophy sharpens the lesson. Epictetus reminded his students that freedom comes from distinguishing what is and isn't your responsibility, and most passive-aggressive people intentionally blur that line. They want their burdens to feel like your duties, their discomfort to feel like your problem, their expectations to feel like your obligation. But the Stoic refuses this exchange, not with anger, not with coldness, but with clarity. The beauty of boundary setting lies in its simplicity. You do not need to raise your voice to reclaim your time. You do not need to justify your schedule to protect your peace. You do not need approval to take care of your own life. A boundary is not a performance. It is a quiet decision. I once watched a friend, someone gentle, thoughtful, naturally generous, transform her entire dynamic with a passive-aggressive coworker using nothing but a steady boundary. For months, the coworker would leave tasks on her desk with a light comment like, "You're so much better at organizing this." It wasn't a compliment. It was a transfer of responsibility, and she used to accept it out of habit. One day, she changed the script. When he dropped a file on her desk, she placed her hand on it lightly and said, "This isn't mine. You'll need to handle it. No justification, no apology, no explanation." The coworker stuttered, tried to make it seem like a small inconvenience, tried to appeal to her kindness. She simply repeated, "You'll need to handle it." Calm, clear, final. The coworker stopped trying after that day. This is the quiet power of the Stoic boundary. It is not about punishing someone. It is not about retaliating. It is about self-possession, your time, your energy, your peace remaining yours to give, not theirs to take. And here is something else to understand deeply. Passive-aggressive people rely not on your kindness, but on your fear of appearing unkind. They rely on the story you tell yourself. I don't want to be difficult. I should be helpful. I don't want to create tension. But Marcus Aurelius wrote that you must stop seeking to please everyone. The world does not need it, and your soul cannot bear it. When you set a boundary without explaining it, you reclaim the space inside you that has been quietly eroded by guilt or obligation. You show that your life is not a resource for others to extract from. And the remarkable thing is this: the more quietly firm your boundaries become, the fewer passive-aggressive people remain around you. They either adjust or they drift away. But either way, you rise. And this rising leads us to the next truth, the moment when your calmness forces others to reveal who they truly are, the moment when your steadiness becomes the mirror that exposes everything they tried to hide. That, in the next chapter, is where the real shift begins. Now imagine entering this final chapter the way someone steps into a quiet room after a long storm, the kind of silence that feels earned, not empty. This is the moment your calmness stops being just composure and becomes something far more powerful. It becomes a mirror that reflects truth without effort. Passive-aggressive people expect confusion, guilt, or defensiveness. But when none of that appears, when you meet their subtle hostility with stillness, their entire strategy begins to unravel. Picture a scene you've lived more than once. Someone offers you a compliment with a sting inside it, or a harmless comment with a tilt that tells you it wasn't harmless at all. Before, you might have tried to defend yourself, soften the moment, or search for meaning in their tone. But now, instead of reacting, something inside you stays steady. You acknowledge the remark, but you don't let it enter you. You no longer carry what isn't yours. Stoicism teaches that strength is not the absence of emotion, but the refusal to let another person's emotion govern your center. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a steady mind forces the world to reorganize around it. And here, in these moments, you see it happen. They cast the hook, but the water does not move. They expect you to tighten, but you remain grounded. They expect a reaction, but your silence gives them none. And suddenly, they're the ones who look unsettled. I once watched a co-worker handle a passive-aggressive remark with nothing but a calm "noted." The room shifted instantly. The person delivering the jab lost his balance because he had nothing to push against. Her steadiness stripped his comment of its power. He exposed himself, not because she confronted him, but because she refused to engage in the game he tried to play. This is what stillness does. It reveals intent without accusation. It shows character without conflict. Seneca wrote that the person who remains unshaken teaches others who they truly are. When you remain composed, you force passive-aggressive people into the open. Their subtle jabs become sharper, their tone becomes more strained, and their disguise thins. And soon, others begin to see what only you used to notice. Another moment stays with me. A friend had a supervisor who relied on indirect criticism to maintain control. For years, she tried to prove herself, to earn approval he was never going to give. One day, she shifted. When he offered another veiled insult, she didn't defend or explain. She simply answered, "If you have specific feedback, tell me." That single sentence, calm, direct, unbothered, exposed the hollowness of his remark. He had no specifics. He never did. And the spell broke right there. Your calmness is not weakness. It is authority. It communicates that you won't be moved by tone, won't be guilted by implication, won't be manipulated by subtlety. You stand in a place inside yourself that they cannot reach, and from that place you watch something powerful happen. They stop trying, their tactics fade, their influence dissolves. Passive-aggressive people cannot thrive in the presence of someone who doesn't react. This is the quiet transformation the Stoics understood deeply. When you no longer let others dictate your emotional rhythm, you reclaim your life from the smallest forms of manipulation. You begin to see passive-aggressive behavior not as a threat, but as a pattern, predictable, fragile, and ultimately powerless against someone who refuses to participate. And perhaps the greatest shift of all is this: you stop outsmarting them and you start outgrowing them. When your calmness is consistent, the wrong people drift away and the right people draw closer. You move through the world with a presence that doesn't need defending, a clarity that cannot be twisted, and a strength that speaks before you ever say a word. And as you step forward from here, you carry a truth that passive-aggressive people cannot touch. Your peace belongs to you, and you are done giving it away. When you start seeing passive-aggressive behavior for what it is, something inside you becomes unshakable. You no longer chase explanations. You no longer absorb what is not yours. You move with a clarity that softens nothing, yet harms no one. And that clarity becomes the quiet shield that protects your peace. If this message stayed with you, take a moment to reflect. Let it remind you that calmness is not weakness. Calmness is self-respect. Calmness is choosing not to carry the weight someone else tried to hand you. And every time you stand in that stillness, you rise a little higher. If you want to keep strengthening this inner steadiness, you are welcome to subscribe so you never miss the next step of this journey. Share your thoughts with a short comment using the words, "I stay calm." It will help anchor the lesson more deeply in your mind. Remember that you do not need to match anyone's hidden intentions to protect your own. Stay centered, stay aware, and trust that your quiet strength will reveal everything you need to see. The next video will take you even further into the kind of calm power that reshapes your entire world. Stay close. Your growth has only just begun.